show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, listening on the Extra Sports 1300 app, or you're watching on a couple of our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook at Extra Sports 1300 if you're looking for the live stream, and Twitter to be, or X to be back up shortly. Veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the next 3 hours, and I would love your take on all of them. The number for the phone line and the text line, however you want to communicate, it's the same number, 719-247-1313. I will discuss the rare matchup that we got today, which was Nikola Jokic against Joel Embiid. I think you'll be pleased with the results. But I want to start the day where the Broncos report to training camp. And today, it's now football season. Broncos aren't the only team reporting. Chiefs actually reported yesterday. Teams are starting to report. And that's always been used for baseball, right? The best words in all of the English have an antiquated notion. Blank reports to training camp. Those are the best words in the English language because it means we are officially foot on the training camp field. They made news. As last night, Adam Schefter, other multiple NFL insiders reporting that Quinn Meinerz, one of the highest paid offensive guards in $1 million. Not bad for a third-round pick out of a Division III school. And I think when, as an organization, when you find these guys, there is this inherent, we got to sign this guy. We got to keep this guy. We got to lock this guy up. He's one of ours. We did the work on. He's a win. And you want to keep those wins for your front office around. And Quinn Meinerz is one of the best guards in the NFL. So it's not like he's being compensated for something he isn't. You could make a case that he's approaching top 5 offensive guard level, and I think he still has some room to grow. So this was kind of a no-brainer. There's a little sticker shock, given that he is a guard. But the comparison I would make is what the Denver Nuggets did with their starting 5. Once they identified that this 5 or core 4, which is an even more apt comparison because the Broncos are saving some money at the center position. But once we know this unit works, we want to keep this unit together. And yes, it will cause us to overpay some people, Michael Porter Jr. But in the end, what we are betting on is this group. And the Nuggets, Tim Connolly, made the right bet. This is what the Denver Broncos are doing. Sean Payton, his first orders of business when he took over as the head coach of the Denver Broncos was to sign Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers to lucrative contracts. He's always been somebody that has prioritized his offensive line. And he did that right away in Denver. That was the first impression Sean Payton made when he took the reins of this organization was the offensive line's got to get better. No more perpetual treadmill when it comes to the right tackle position. We're getting Mike McGlinchey. We're getting a guy that's played in Super Bowls, a guy that's been one of the best at his position for a number of years. And then we're getting Ben Powers, who comes from a Baltimore Ravens team that is always known for their ability to run the football and how good of an offensive line they have. That's what Sean Payton did the minute he walked through the doors of Dove Valley. And that continues. The Denver Broncos have found a group worth investing in that is greater than the sum of its parts. McGlinchey's locked in. Powers is locked in. Now Meinertz is locked in. We'll talk about Garrett Bowles' future with the Denver Broncos coming up, but right now he's under contract. And you put it together, and it is the most expensivest. Ever watch that show with 2 Chainz, Most Expensivest? It is the highest priced offensive line in football. We always get caught up in weapons, right? Young quarterbacks, they need weapons. Offenses need weapons. Look at Mahomes without Tyreek Hill. How is he going to do? How is Josh Allen going to do now that Stephon Diggs is gone? But especially for young quarterbacks, we tend to get fixated on the skill positions. But football is still a game that is won in the trenches. The running game, still important in today's NFL. Everything's on your offense stems from the offensive line. And Sean Payton made it a priority when he got to Denver, and they continue to make it a priority. And it wouldn't necessarily matter if Bo Nix was on this team or not, because clearly this was Sean Payton's vision on the offensive side. Because they haven't invested heavily in the running back room. They haven't invested a lot in terms of pass catching weapons. It's been the offensive line. It starts there. And we'll see how the center position battle shapes up as training camp goes on. And coming up in a little bit, I'll throw out some of the training camp storylines for the Denver Broncos that I have. Certainly, you would have to put the position battle at center on that list. It didn't make my top 5, but it's certainly something to watch for the Denver Broncos during training camp is who ends up being their starting center. But once they decide that, they will have one of the most expensive, but also one of the better offensive lines in the NFL in front of their young quarterback. And you look at this situation that Bo Nix has found himself in, and all the talk over from the draft until now has been what a perfect marriage Bo Nix and Sean Payton are. And how great the coaching is going to be for Bo Nix. But you expand beyond that. You like the running back room that the Denver Broncos have. They've invested heavily in their offensive line. I think the Wide receiver room could use an obvious tweak, a major upgrade in the form of somebody who's currently playing for the San Francisco 49ers. I've been very clear about that over the last couple of days. It's not a bad spot that Bo Nix has found himself in. It's not Caleb Williams in Chicago. But if you just look at the situation that Bo Nix finds himself in, take the skill position guys, take coaching, take the offensive line. It's a pretty good spot for a rookie quarterback to be in. And let's be fair about this. He's going to need it. He's going to need it, right? Even if you believe in Bo Nix, you understand that he is not the guy to make up the difference when it comes to a poor offensive line or poor weapons to throw to or poor coaching, right? Jaden Daniels is a good fit in Washington, and Caleb Williams, and I know they surrounded him with a lot of talent, but those are quarterbacks that because of their physical gifts, they can account for some shortcomings elsewhere on the offense. Bo Nix is not that guy. But if you have these other pieces in place, that's where you think Bo Nix can be the guy. And Sean Payton, on more than one occasion, has brought up the Detroit Lions. The Lions didn't come up with this model, but they're probably the best example right now in the NFL of what the Broncos are trying to do. Right? Because you look at a San Francisco, and they're kind of an extreme case, right? Because they have one of the best 3 tight ends in football, and they have one of the best 7 wide receivers, and then how far back beyond that is Deebo Samuel. They got 2 top 20 receivers. They got the best running back in the game. But you look at Detroit, they have a quarterback that doesn't wow you with his ability. He doesn't have all the physical tools of an Allen or a Mahomes or a Lamar or even a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, but he's smart. Jared Goff is a smart quarterback, takes care of the football. And what do? You build a wall in front of him, and you give him a few guys to throw to, and now Detroit is a lot of people's pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Sean Payton has talked on multiple occasions about how much he loves what Detroit is doing. And he's trying to replicate that. But it's not a new phenomenon. Sean Payton did a lot of this in New Orleans. But if you want to kind of see what the Broncos are aspiring to be, I think you point at Detroit. But Quinn Meinerz, 3rd-round pick from a D3 school, is now one of the highest paid players at his position. And the Broncos offensive line is the most expensive in the National Football League. And it's all for Bo. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Quinn Meinerz's extension. Coming up next, we only get this about once a year, so we have to relish it when we get it, and that is Nikola Jokic versus Joel Embiid. We got it today. The game didn't count. But don't tell that to Nikola Jokic. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to interact with the show, as Tucker has chosen to do, and I am appreciative of that fact. Show is always better when I hear from you guys. Tucker says, Ryan, I understand what you're saying, but most expensive doesn't mean the best. It's not going to help Denver. You're absolutely right. As far as the price tag doesn't, but are the guys worth the price tag? And I know Mike McGlinchey maybe didn't quite live up to expectation last year, nor did Ben Powers. But those guys have a long track record that I think the Broncos are willing to bet on. But McGlinchey, Bowles, good tackle pairing, and their best offensive lineman, either anecdotally or if you are a pro football focused person, says that Quinn Meinerz was their best offensive lineman. So yeah, most expensive doesn't mean best. But if you just cut out Quinn Meinerz, he's one of the better guards in the NFL, and he's now being compensated like it. Now, whether it will help Denver depends on your perspective on Bo Nix. Right? And I've been very clear about how I feel with Bo Nix. I think there will come a day where you'll look at Bo Nix and you'll say, good on him for getting us this far, but we need another guy to take us over the top. We need a guy with a higher ceiling. We need a more dynamic playmaker at the quarterback position. At some point, you're going to say that. Best case scenario, you're looking at an Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes transition, right? You win a lot of games, maybe not the games that you most want to win, like games that take you to a Super Bowl. Like Bo Nix can be that guy. The question is, what does he show this year? Because if he's bad and the Broncos are bad, despite how I've had to apparently stick up for Shedeur Sanders over the last few days, he's going to be awfully enticing. And he is that kind of a player, more dynamic, more talented. But if the Broncos aren't successful offensively, and we'll hone in what successful means. They're probably not a top 10 offense. But however you judge success, ultimately, yes, it lies at the quarterback position. But you can help your quarterback by fortifying the offensive line, getting him weapons, and coaching him up. And the Broncos, to me, at least check two of those three boxes. Oh, we were looking forward to this one, weren't we, today? 10 a.m. this morning, Jokic versus Embiid. I had a thought right before tip-off. I wasn't on social media, so I didn't see the starting lineups. I half wondered if Steve Kerr would not start Joel Embiid. Just, I don't know, old habits, I suppose. I just had a feeling that I needed to see Embiid actually on the floor with Nikola Jokic to believe that we were actually going to get the matchup that we were looking forward to. Embiid was out there. And Nikola Jokic had his way with him. To be quite blunt, two of the first 3 or 4 possessions, Nikola Jokic backs down Joel Embiid, fakes one way, spins back the other, and Joel Embiid is still like hanging out. If Jokic spun to his right and then or went to his right and then quickly spun back to his left, Joel Embiid would still be leaning right when Jokic went by him. He made him look. It looked like a highlight from an And One mixtape. The crowd would be going, oh, and like the guy that yells, says, oh, baby, all the time. That guy would be going nuts. He torched him. And if Jokic didn't really have his touch today around the rim. He missed some easy shots early in that game, but he beat Joel Embiid flat out. And you really think about the matchups that have occurred between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. It's really not Embiid's defense that is the story, right? You can say that Joel Embiid has gotten the better of Nikola Jokic because the Sixers beat the Nuggets or because Embiid's stats are better. But I went back and looked, and you're right. Like, Joel Embiid outscored Nikola Jokic in the last three matchups 41-25, 47-24, and 39-22. That's the first stat we look at. And Embiid outscored Nikola Jokic by a fairly wide margin. But Jokic in those games shot 50%, 67%, 55%. Embiid didn't really stop Nikola Jokic from doing anything. Not when he had his mind made up that he was going to score. Embiid just outbeats Nikola Jokic or outshines him, however you want to put it, because Embiid is a dominant offensive player. And no part of this Embiid Jokic conversation are we talking about Nikola Jokic's ability to lock down Joel Embiid, because we know what Nikola Jokic is as a defender. He's greatly improved. He probably doesn't get the credit he deserves on that end of the floor, but he's not elite. He's not an elite defensive player. It's really Joel Embiid outscoring Nikola Jokic. And then you dive in a little bit deeper into the box score and you realize that a big reason why Joel Embiid outscores Nikola Jokic like he does, look at the free throw disparity. International play. Can't get away with it. In fact, there was one where Joel Embiid caught the ball and without even looking, jumped straight into Nikola Jokic. No whistle. No whistle. Embiid continues to try and get away with the same stuff he gets away with over an 82-game season in the NBA, and he can't get away with it. 8 points and 8 rebounds for Joel Embiid in this game. But the thought process from Steve Kerr, you know, if anybody's going to be able to defend Nikola Jokic one-on-one, it's Embiid. It's not like we have this ton of evidence saying that Joel Embiid has shut down Nikola Jokic. That's not what this is. This is the best of a bunch of bad options. Right? But Embiid's bigger body, his ability to block shots, you think it gives you the best chance that there currently is in the NBA to defending or slowing down Nikola Jokic. And today, Joel Embiid fortified the fact that Nikola Jokic is unguardable one-on-one. You can't defend Nikola Jokic one-on-one. I don't care who you are. There is no one on planet Earth right now that can defend Nikola Jokic one-on-one. So that's out the window. Embiid is no Jokic stopper. Embiid can outscore Jokic. Can't defend him. And it was woeful, his attempt to guard Nikola Jokic today. But I will say that when Steve Kerr put in Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic had a difficult time. He did. And think about it, it does make sense, right? Anthony Davis cannot guard Nikola Jokic one-on-one, right? So when he's playing for the Lakers, who does he have to help him? Rui Hachimura? LeBron's going to come over and help? But now you put Anthony Davis with Bam Adebayo? That's better than 2020 Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis Lakers. And it wasn't that I thought Anthony Davis had his moments. He blocked a couple of shots. I thought he played extremely well. But it wasn't like he himself locked down Nikola Jokic. Anytime Jokic would get away from Davis, Bam Adebayo will be right there. So Joel Embiid proved to be no match for Nikola Jokic. And with Embiid struggles on the other end of the floor because he can't get to the free throw line as much as he's accustomed to, you really have to wonder what it is that Joel Embiid brings to this basketball team. He just sticks out in a bad way. He just doesn't look like he fits. Because this team is full of alphas, right? Half of the roster are number one or number two options for their team. Right? They all have ego. They're all alphas. But their skill sets allow them to play more in a team game, right? Steph Curry's a point guard by trade. LeBron James is one of the best passers in the NBA. Devin Booker has found a way to coexist with Kevin Durant and to play off of him. Problem is Phoenix threw Bradley Beal into the mix, and they don't know what to do now with the three of them. But there are a lot of guys on this team that even though you would identify as alphas and identify as Anthony Edwards being another one, they do have some parts to their game that allow them to fit in as a team. And they're able to coexist better than Joel Embiid does. He just looks like he can't coexist with other people who are getting a high volume of shots. And that's not just today. That's these three friendlies together. It just looks like Joel Embiid, if he's not getting a touch every time down the floor, if he's not the number one option every time down the floor, and he can't foul bait, he can't get to the free throw line, he just looks lost. He just doesn't know what to do, and he looks bad. So already you had Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo. That probably is the one thing on Team USA that Steve Kerr has gone 100% right. Playing those two together from the outset has been awesome for Team USA. Everything else is a work in progress. But given what I saw today, when they match up on the 28th, it should be Anthony Davis and Bam on the floor with Nikola Jokic, not Joel Embiid. because you can't guard him one-on-one. Do you break up the best part of your team right now? You can't break up AD and Bam and play one of them with Embiid. The hope was that Embiid would be able to defend Nikola Jokic by himself. He can't. So now your best option is to put another big out on the floor. But you can't break up a good thing. I think the bet that Steve Kerr will make moving forward is if I get the other spots in the starting five figured out, I can live with it. Maybe Embiid wasn't what I hoped he would be, but if I get the other four spots in the starting five, we'll be fine. We'll get by, and I'll keep AD and Bam together. But when these two teams play on the 28th, if Team USA is going to slow down Nikola Jokic, and today they did a little bit, they blew out Serbia. So maybe they can live with Nikola Jokic going off against Joel Embiid. But I would expect even more of AD and Bam on Jokic when they meet up in the first game of the Olympics. Jokic, again, didn't really have the touch around the rim that we expect. 16, 11, and 2. He was just 6 of 19 from the field, but the vast majority of those misses came with Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo guarding him. So much for that idea. Sixers, NBA, Team USA. There is not a player on planet Earth that can D up Nikola Jokic one-on-one. But when you have LeBron, Steph, Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, you can more than make up for it. U.S. wins big, and now they'll play South Sudan, which I expect. I don't know what the point spread for that. It might be 30. This is the JV scrimmaging the varsity in their next friendly, and I think they have one more, and then it's off to Paris. 719-247-1313. If you watched the game earlier today, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Last night, unfortunately, not much to watch. All-Star game, pretty lame. But we still had the story of Paul Skeens, and he did pretty well. You'll hear from the former Air Force star, current Pittsburgh Pirate, coming up next. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game, like all All-Star games, is by definition an exhibition. Doesn't count. We all remember what the overreaction was to that tie in Milwaukee to make the game count for home field while you're still letting teams that have no shot of even getting to the playoffs deciding who's going to get home field for the World Series. That was a gross overreaction. And I'm glad that after a couple of years, they thought better of it and went back to the way it was. And I think that something happened last night that they should rethink and go back to the way it was. I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. But it is an exhibition. Okay, the stakes aren't high. We want to see the stars. That's what we want to see. We don't tune into the All-Star game for National League and American League pride. Do you even care that the American League has won 10 of the last 11 All-Star games? I thought about that stat last night, and I was like, I don't care. Maybe it's interleague play that the separation of the two leagues is just so diluted now that it doesn't matter. I don't take pride, and I don't think many people take pride in repping the National League or the American League, which again feeds into thing I might as well just do it now since I've brought up two things that apply to this. The uniforms have to go. The uniforms have to go. And there's a couple reasons why. One is because they burn your retinas. They're most hideous abominations I've ever seen. And I believe they are made by the same company, Fanatics, that makes all the MLB uniforms that have been under perpetual fire this season because the names are too small and they're see-through. But those uniforms last night were horrific. And they have to go for two reasons. One, because it is a better look when guys are in their own uniforms. Okay? Because we don't care about AL versus NL. That's what the uniforms last night. Any uniforms, even better looking uniforms, I still wouldn't like over just these guys wearing their normal baseball uniforms. Because I don't care about the National League versus the American League. To me, you just got to pick the team somehow. And if Major League Baseball wanted to go to, Team Ohtani versus Team Judge next year and have these guys pick team, that's fine. I don't care. I don't care how you separate the teams. We just have to have two teams. Call them Team A and Team B for all I care. I don't care about National League, American League. And most fans don't either. A lot of fans that tune into All-Star games want to see their guy. And in basketball, football, I get it. Guys get tangled up. It's a little bit harder to see. So you kind of need to have uniformity in terms of the look, right? So you could separate the two teams. But baseball, you don't need to do that. It is very clear who is hitting. It's very clear who's in the field. What people want to see is their team's player representing their team, right? If you were tuning in last night when Ryan McMahon came in, you wanted to see him with Rockies purple and black and white or gray. You wanted to see him in the Rockies colors. He is the Rockies representative. He's not just one of the National League players. Next year, put all these players back in their normal uniforms. I want to see Yankee pinstripes. I want to see Dodger blue. I want to see the one player that is wearing purple. It's better that way. And they should go back to it. And also they should go back to it because if this is their idea, how long have they been sitting on this idea of we're going to make the uniforms the same? It's going to be National League, American League. And this is the color scheme these are the color schemes they come up with. Like, I would expect that to be a look for an all-star game in Miami, right? Miami's a colorful city. You've seen some of the Heat throwbacks, or not throwbacks, but alternate. They wear the Miami Vice. That's what it looked like. But they were in Texas. It made no sense. It was hard to watch with them being in it, and it was difficult when we had a record number of first-time All-Stars to know who the hell was on the field. We couldn't even figure out what team they're from to be able to narrow it down. It was just this blur of baby blue and coral and pink, and it was awful. Go back to their regular club uniforms. We can tell the difference between the AL and the NL. But you know what this is about? This is about selling it, right? This is about making money. Your favorite player went to the All-Star game, you get in the mood, and you want to buy his jersey. Except the problem is it will backfire because nobody who has any self-respect would be caught dead in those uniforms. And I feel terrible for the players that they were forced to wear them. I can't wait to see when those are on a rack at, one of those jersey stores and they're like $20. I would say probably by September. Who would buy those? They're horrific. So the uniforms, unfortunately, much like the national anthem was a bigger story than the actual home run derby, I would say the uniforms were a bigger story than the game itself. But what I will say in defense of the game, once you got past those horrid uniforms, was that the two guys that you wanted to see, you saw. And you saw play well, do what they do best. Shohei Ohtani hit a moonshot, and I will never get tired of hearing a ball come off of Shohei Ohtani's bat. Nobody can make a sound like Ohtani does when he hits a baseball. So you got that. You got Ohtani being Ohtani, even though he's only a hitter now. And then you got Paul Skeens. You got him to start, and thanks, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Juan Soto promised that Aaron Judge would bat in that first inning, and he drew a walk. But Paul Skeens faced the four best hitters in the American League, walked one, 16 pitches, 11 strikes, got out of the inning unscathed, not even really under any threat. But you wanted that matchup. A little disappointed that Stephen Kwan batted first. I was worried that we wouldn't get to Aaron Judge. We did. So in terms of the star power in this game, we got it. And I think that was probably the best part of it. The Pirates ace, one-time Air Force Falcon, talked about what it was like being on that all-star mound for the first time.
Being out there, I don't think I blacked out when I was out there, but I was pretty close. It was cool to be on that mound.
Remember, Paul Skeens talked about blacking out in his first major league start. Apparently, he is prone to blacking out and not remembering what's going on. I thought something kind of cool. Paul Skeens didn't leave. I remember when I covered the All-Star game at Coors Field that most of the players who had been subbed out were gone. And we really could only talk to the players that ended the game and then the MVP, which that year was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. A lot of these guys, once they're done, they get out of there and get on with the rest of their lives. Paul Skeens started the game through one inning and stayed till the very end. I thought that was kind of cool. He met with the media, which is why you're hearing this audio. And Skeens talked about what he was doing when he wasn't pitching, but sticking around in the dugout.
It's stuff that's probably going to help me over the course of my career. But talking with Chris Sale, who's been to 8 of these, I think, and Glasnow and Logan Webb and Hunter Green and guys like that. Even if I get one tiny piece of advice or something that can, one tiny nugget from them, that's it could help.
I know Paul Skeens has not. He's a long way to go before he's even a Hall of Famer. Right? I know he has a long way to go. But he is the biggest story in baseball. He is a phenom. He has been dominant on the mound. And he's staying for a full 9-inning baseball game when he doesn't have to, picking the brains of his colleagues and talking about how much he can learn from them. And he would say, of course, he's a rookie, but I think his success kind of makes you forget that he is just a rookie. But even though his stuff and his ability is beyond his years, he still recognizes that he has so much to learn. I think that's cool that he stuck around and was asking questions and gathering intel. You want that learning mindset from young players and not players that think that they know better or because they've arrived and everybody's fawning over them that they figured it out. Paul Skeens clearly knows that he hasn't figured everything out yet, which is actually a very scary thought for the rest of Major League Baseball if you think about it. And here's Paul Skeens kind of recapping what this last 13 months have been and his meteoric rise through the ranks of baseball.
Obviously done a lot over the last 13 months. I think LSU as a whole does a good job of preparing us for 4 big moments.
Yeah, pitching in the College World Series, winning a national title, I would say that prepares you about as well as anything can for what Paul Skeens has been doing over the past couple of months. You got the bottom of the first. You got Ohtani's home run. The rest of the game was kind of nondescript. Unless you're a Red Sox fan, you were very excited about Duran hitting that home run. But unfortunately, like so many things in baseball, they take a good thing or what could be a good thing and they ruin it. And those uniforms were enough to just about ruin the entire evening. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, now that Quinn Meinertz is going to be in Denver for the next few years, there is another member of that offensive line that is only signed through this season. Will Garrett Bowles be a member of the Denver Broncos past this season? We'll discuss next. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Keep wanting to make it Thursday. I don't know why. Getting a little dark out there. But again, we need the moisture. Appreciate you tuning in. And a reminder, you can watch the show live on a daily basis on our social media platforms. Having a bit of an issue right now with the fine folks at X that we were working through, and should be good to go to get it back on X tomorrow. But today, if you're trying to watch the show, Facebook, Instagram would be the places to go at Extra Sports 1300. Just got done talking about the All-Star game last night, where much like the Home Run Derby, it was a negative story that I wouldn't say completely trumped the proceedings like that national anthem did the other night. That completely overshadowed the Home Run Derby. No one wanted to talk about the Home Run Derby. I would say because of Skeens and Ohtani, I still think that was the story, but those uniforms were horrific. Chris texted the American League creamsicles. I thought it was more coral. That's what my read on the American League creamsicles would be. Good. I mean, if they care so much about making this a team and not just a collection of individuals from different teams, then they should really have a team name and there you have it, the creamsicles. I don't really have a life, but I have more of a life than what would be required for me to want to do a deep dive on why they picked the colors that they did. They were horrible, and I never once watched that game and went, oh, clearly it's in Texas. Just look at the uniforms. So I have no idea why they picked those. But they were. Yeah, it's not worth spending time. I was going to say something about the City Connect. You know what? It doesn't matter. Get rid of them. Let everybody wear their normal team uniforms. That's what we want. Does Major League Baseball have any just like fans on the payroll? I'm not saying like pick some random Yankee fan and employ him, but is there no one that's actually a fan of baseball that works for baseball? Like no one that can kind of tap into what the people want? Because baseball makes so many decisions that you go, who asked for this? Nobody asked for those uniforms. Nobody did. But the American League creamsicles beat the National League Smurfs. I know it's not quite the same, but we're trying to, be critical of the uniform. So to call them the Smurfs, I think would be Neon Smurfs. American League beat the National League 10 times now in 11 years. And somehow we're just expected to continue to live our lives knowing that the American League has dominated the National League in the way that they have. But we will move on. We must move on. Quinn Meinerz agreeing to a lucrative extension with the Denver Broncos last night. That news broke. And so now you look at the Broncos offensive line, which this year will be the highest paid, most well-compensated offensive line in the National Football League. But you notice that projecting out, not everybody is on board for the foreseeable future. Now, we have to figure out who the starting center will be. My early prediction is it will end up being Alex Forsythe. And if that ends up being the case, He's under contract for multiple years. Miners signed an extension. Powers and McGlinchey signed multi-year deals when they arrived. Garrett Bowles is now a curious case. What did they do with him? Because you have a couple of different things going on here. Not only is the rest of the offensive line under contract for multiple years, but after this year, McGlinchey's contract takes a huge jump in value. This year, McGlinchey will count as $7.4 million against the cap. And I know you can always do, fancy accounting, right? You can restructure, you could convert signing bonuses, you could do all that stuff. But as of right now, McGlinchey makes $7.4 million this year, and that number will jump up to nearly $24 million next year. Ben Powers, same kind of deal. $6.5 million this year, $17.5 million next year. So no doubt that the Denver Broncos are making it a priority in the Sean Payton era to fortify their offensive line. And if they get guys that they like, they want to keep them. But Garrett Bowles, if he has a good season, is probably going to be worth a pretty good chunk of change on the open market. He is a left tackle, after all. Broncos tried to save some money by letting Lloyd Cushenberry walk because their calculation was that center is not as big of a priority. And you can understand why, right? Center is never left one-on-one. Doesn't have to win any one-on-one battles. Can't line up over center anymore. Like, if there's one place that you're going to cut costs, it would be center. So I think they would make this move with Lloyd Cushenberry, letting him walk, no matter what they had behind him. But I do think a little bit, too, is they do like the depth that they have. But you got two guards that you feel pretty good about it on either side. I don't know that they can, unless they draft a left tackle, I don't know that they can cut costs too much at left tackle. They're probably going to have to pay somebody to play that position. Is Garrett Bowles that guy? And is Garrett Bowles, more poignantly, is Garrett Bowles a Sean Payton guy? Because this happens whenever a new coach comes in, right? He inherits a roster. He brings in his own guys, and you have this mix of them, and you kind of wonder on a year-to-year basis as these contracts start to come up, well, he inherited this guy. So does Sean Payton really value Garrett Bowles? Because everyone else on that offensive line has a vote of confidence from Sean Payton that Garrett Bowles doesn't. And it's not to say that Sean Payton hasn't been complimentary of Garrett Bowles, but monetarily, he committed to Powers and McGlinchey right off the bat. He's now given his seal of approval to Quinn Meinerz and allowed George Payton to sign him to an extension. The guys that are going to be battling at the center spot, he'll be picking that. So there will be, in some way, a vote of confidence. It will be a Sean Payton pick. And then that leaves Garrett Bowles, who it's not even a question. There's no one on this roster that's better than Garrett Bowles as a left tackle, but you inherited him if you're Sean Payton. And his play doesn't make you think that the Broncos need to move on. But there's something to be said for having your guys. Does he want, a more, maybe less physically imposing and a higher football IQ guy? Because you would think, unless there is a contract negotiation that is contentious, why wouldn't Garrett Bowles get paid before Quinn Meinerz? Garrett Bowles has been there longer. He's a more high-profile player, plays a more high-profile and more important position. Wouldn't you want to get that deal done before Quinn Meinerz? The timing of this, I think, says that Sean Payton is at least amenable to the idea of Garrett Bowles walking away after this season. Because if he was this franchise, gotta have him left tackle that Sean Payton coached last year and said, this is my guy, I would think his extension would be done before Quinn Meinerz. I know there's a different tax bracket, if you will, that goes along with left tackles as opposed to guards, but I'm saying from a priority standpoint, who would you want to lock up first? A guard or a tackle? Of course it's a tackle. I think the Broncos, Sean Payton, feels under no pressure to get Garrett Bowles locked up. Either because he has more evaluation he wants to do before committing long-term, or he's willing to let him go out in the free market and see what he can get. Quinn Meinerz signing this deal says that he was a higher priority. To me, says he was a higher priority than Garrett Bowles. You look at the draft, a couple of names that are going to come up, and you might as well start watching them now. Will Campbell at LSU is going to be a first-round tackle. You also have a player from Georgia, so Ernest Green, you won't have to look too far. They're both playing the same conference. Those are right now the top two tackles in college football. Draft eligible tackles in college football. Campbell profiles more as a left tackle, Green more of a right tackle. So maybe a couple of names to watch. Could the Broncos be looking to save money that way? Let Garrett Bowles walk and prioritize a lineman with their first round pick this year. Could be. But I bring up two names, not just to highlight that they're the two best tackles in college football, but also to highlight the fact that there aren't a lot this year. This is shaping up to not be a very deep draft at tackle. Now, a lot of things can change, right? This is an entirely fluid situation. There's always one guy that comes on that scouts didn't expect. So it could change. But as of right now, those are the two names that are being mentioned as potential first-round picks, and that's it. Or at least, through most of the first round. If you have a need and you're drafting late in the first round, you could always take someone that's more of a second rounder just because you have to address a specific need. But so Garrett Bowles will be interesting because I was a little bit surprised to see that Quinn Meinerz got extended before Garrett Bowles. Not saying that Quinn Meinerz shouldn't have been extended. Absolutely. But you think about priorities, most important positions on the field. Tackle is before guard, and you have one that's entering a contract year. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Broncos fortifying their offensive line or keeping their offensive line intact. Training camp, practice hasn't started yet, but players report today. So as good a time as any to bring up some of the storylines that I think surround this year's version of Broncos training camp, and I will share them with you next on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the text line. If you are so inclined, Steve G, usually inclined and is inclined today to text in, says Bowles' improvement from day one is amazing. Good talent is expensive and you have to pay for it. Yeah, and if Garrett Bowles is playing his last season in Denver, I don't think it's actually a referendum on his talent. I really don't. And I think that he can sign a lucrative deal somewhere else and be very successful. But not all linemen are the same. And no one should know that better than the folks in this state. You think of the Broncos teams of the 90s. Their offensive lines did not look the same as others. It's not always the biggest, strongest 5 guys that you can put on an offensive line. And Tom Nalen, more than anybody else, exemplified that. He was vastly undersized for his position. But it was about the scheme. And I think that's when I think a lot of people's eyes, my eyes were certainly open to the idea of it's not like in junior high where you just put your 5 biggest guys out there, right? There's schemes. I had no idea. I had no idea they were schemes when it comes to blocking. I just thought it was, you're really big. Make sure you could push around this other very big dude. Alex Gibbs showed us that there's more to the position. There's more to playing offensive line. And getting back to my comparison to what the Nuggets did a few years ago by signing Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter to these lucrative extensions because they wanted to keep that starting 5 or that core 4, and then Calvin Booth found the perfect 5th guy in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. The idea of keeping those guys together because they played so well together. They fit so well together. It wasn't overlapping skill sets. Right? They wanted a couple of shooters, but they wanted a guy that could penetrate and get to the rim. They wanted someone that could rebound and defend. And they're all complementary skill sets. It's the same thing with the offensive line. So if Sean Payton doesn't want Garrett Bowles past this season, it's not because Garrett Bowles isn't the player that we believe he's been built into. And to Steve's point, what an amazing arc this guy had. Remember when it was a running joke, the number of holding calls on Garrett Bowles? And then Munchak gets his hands on him, and then Garrett Bowles becomes the Broncos franchise left tackle. He's still that guy. But does he do the things, are his strengths complementary to the other guys on the offensive line, or do they have overlapping skill sets? What does Sean Payton prioritize? I think I remember when in that very same draft, Sean Payton took Ryan Ramczyk. And he didn't necessarily look the part of a left tackle. Garrett Bowles was more of a physical specimen than Ramczyk was. But Sean Payton, who, if memory serves, drafted before the Broncos that year, took Ramczyk. Doesn't mean he wouldn't have liked to have Garrett Bowles. And that's what I'm saying. It will be interesting to see if what Garrett Bowles brings to the table is what Sean Payton wants out of his left tackle. It's not just 1 year where this evaluation, figuring out who fits with Sean Payton, who doesn't. It's not just a 1 year thing. But Garrett Bowles right now, the only Broncos projected starter to only be under contract for 1 more year now that Quinn Meinerz has signed his extension. Certainly, who rounds out that offensive line at the center position is something to watch as the Broncos get training camp underway. And again, I do think it will be Alex Forsyth who will take that job, but we'll see it play out. That did not make my list of the top 5 storylines for Broncos training camp. Just missed the cut. It's an honorable mention. Here are my top 5. At number 5, who will play opposite Pat Surtain? Damari Mathis had that gig last year, still on the team. But they brought in Levi Wallace. They didn't pay a ton of money to Wallace. So it doesn't give you the idea that, oh, he's definitely coming in and is going to be that second corner. But they've at least felt the need to bring him in. And then you have somebody who's been a training camp darling in the past in Riley Moss. You're going to get a lot of looks. And I thought Damari Mathis played well at that position opposite Pat Surtain. But when you have one of the best corners in the league on one side, teams are going to target the other side. So is this just iron sharpens iron, pushing Damari Mathis? Is this depth in case Mathis gets hurt? Or I'm be interested to see what comes up on that other corner position opposite Pat Surtain. At number 4, who does Audric Estime take carries from? Where does he fit into this running back room? Well, I think Troy Franklin was my favorite Broncos selection because I do think he has the chance to be very good with Bo Nix, that history they have together. Estime is the most interesting. You have Javonte Williams in a contract year, second year back from the ACL. I'm not ready to write off Javonte Williams. I thought from the outset of his return last year that we would see a better Javonte Williams this year than we saw last. But the numbers didn't turn out to be great at the end of the year for Javonte Williams. You have the emergence of Jaleel McLaughlin. And I'm sure one day, if Sean Payton has his druthers and if everything works out, the Broncos will have a backfield tandem of Estime and McLaughlin. But for this year, I'm curious to see where Estime fits in. I still think Javonte Williams, if he stays healthy, will get the most carries. But Jaleel McLaughlin has certainly proven himself worth some carries. I look at Samaje Perine. And I'm not saying Estime out and out replaces him, but I don't think that's out of the question either. I think Sean Payton could be looking at a backfield trio of Williams, McLaughlin, and Estime. But he's a perfect complement to Jaleel McLaughlin. And I still think Javonte Williams is the best running back the Broncos have on the roster. So, if nothing else, by process of elimination, if they want to get a look at Estime, if they want to get him carries, feels like Samaje Perine may be the one marginalized in that Broncos running back room. But Estime is going to have to earn it, obviously. So where he fits in with the Broncos running game is storyline number 4. Storyline number 3. Is this Kroll stuff for real? Lucas Kroll was the talk of minicamp, right? Sean Payton being so bold as to say the league is soon going to find out how good this guy is. I've heard similar words come out of Sean Payton's mouth, and then we never see the guy again. Like, think of, we got to get Marvin Mims more touches. Like that kind of a thing. Greg Dulcich was supposed to be the joker in Sean Payton's offense, right? His skill set. Oh, Sean Payton's going to love working with him. I know he got banged up, but now he's not even considering Greg Dulcich anymore. The guy that, if you weren't paying attention leading up to the Texans game, you didn't even know the Broncos had Lucas Kroll on their roster, and here Russell Wilson is at the end of the game throwing into double coverage to him. Is the Lucas Kroll hype real? As in, is Sean Payton really committed to this guy? Is he really in love with this guy? Is he really going to feature him and make him a big part of this passing game? I'll be curious to see that. Broncos training camp storyline number 2. We know that the Denver Broncos have talent at pass rusher. I think Nick Bonito put a lot of the bad stuff from his rookie year behind him. I thought he was very good last year. Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper. We know that there's talent. But it's like on the offensive side, when the chips are down, who do you go to? And clearly last year, that was Cortland Sutton. When all else fails, and even before then, Russell Wilson was looking at Cortland Sutton. If the Broncos are in a close game where they need a stop, do they have a pass rusher that can go get them a sack? And I think at times, most everyone in this pass rusher room, if you want to call it that, has shown that there's talent there, that they may be able to turn into that. My bet, if anyone, would be Baron Browning. But what does that look like? Is Baron Browning going to be one of the top sack guys in all of the NFL? Do the Broncos have an alpha pass rusher, a number 1 pass rusher? Or is it just, we're going to bring in a bunch of fresh dudes and the level of play is not going to drop off, and we're going to be able to manufacture pressure on the quarterback, manufacture sacks? And number 1 storyline is, no surprise, it's this.
It's kind of the orphan group. All of them they're all orphan dogs. They've come from somewhere, but they're doing good, and it's a good room.
I don't want to dehumanize the Broncos quarterback room, so I will use the orphan part of it and say, who will be the Annie of this group of orphans? I don't know where people get their depth chart information from, but I saw ESPN has Jared Stidham listed as the number 1 quarterback. Make no mistake about it. This is Bo Nix's job to lose. The Broncos taking him where they took him, reveled in it, thumbed their nose at conventional wisdom of the, what did Sean Payton call it? The draft train or whatever it was. They took Bo Nix at 12. A lot of people turned their nose up at it. And the Broncos sat there and acted like, Sean Payton acted like he was the cat who ate the canary. Like he knows something. And I understood the fit from the outset. I was putting Bo Nix with the Broncos immediately. I get the fit. But Sean Payton is acting like he got a steal. And I didn't think Bo Nix would be a steal. I just thought he'd be a good fit. I don't understand why anyone other than Bo Nix would start the opener. I really don't. If you said all this about Bo Nix and he seems like your dream quarterback and he's got the most experience of any quarterback that we've ever seen come out of college. Why wouldn't he start week 1? And you're going to hear a lot of rhetoric. We're going to do this over the course of the next couple of months. People are going to, Zach Wilson had a great day. Jared Stidham had a great day. It is by definition an open competition. But if that competition is not won by Bo Nix, something has gone wrong. Just know that. If Bo Nix does not get named the Broncos starting quarterback for week 1, something went wrong. But we are going to hear Jared Stidham had a really good day. And Jared Stidham, I've already seen it. Jared Stidham's not going to give up his spot so easily. And by the way, it wasn't even his spot. It was Russell Wilson's spot. I don't know that playing a couple of games means you're the guy. And then I do think this thing will come down to Stidham or Nix. If Nix isn't ready, it will be Stidham. I think Zach Wilson, as this training camp progresses, is going to fade into the background. I don't even know if he's going to be on the roster once the season begins. Picking up Zach Wilson felt like Sean Payton indulging himself. Because you can hear it in that Orphan Dogs bit. He loves it. He loves the idea of taking these lesser quarterbacks and turning them into something more. I think it was an indulgent acquisition because they had to know that nobody was going to jump them for Bo Nix. We just wanted him because they wanted him. But I expect Zach Wilson to kind of, early on, it's going to be all three. But Zach Wilson will start to fade into the background, and midway through training camp, it will be Stidham versus Nix. And if everything goes according to plan, Bo Nix will be the starter week 1 for the Denver Broncos. So those are the 5 training camp storylines as, was it QBs and rookies showing up today? Is that the process of reporting? Many members of the Denver Broncos have reported for camp, and we are smack dab now into football season. 719-247-1313, and the start of football season also means the end of our other favorite season, which is the hypothetical, theoretical ranking of football things, namely quarterbacks. And one ranking this week has gotten a lot of interest, including from me. See if you have it. Executives ranking the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL going into the next year. Yes, Bo Nix, not on the list. Or I should say, no, Bo Nix is not on the list. We'll talk about it next. ESPN certainly saved a doozy of a survey for the last days before training camp begins, polling numerous coaches, executives, and scouts on their top 10 quarterbacks going into the 2024 season, which to me, even though you may take a lot of different factors into it to come up with your responses, you're essentially saying, who do you want going into this season, and rank them? And if I'm reading that right, I think Jordan Love not even being in the top 10 is a mistake. Now, maybe it's not just who you want going into the season, it's who the best are. But if I'm ranking the quarterbacks I want going into the season, Jordan Love would absolutely be one of the 10 quarterbacks. And he along with Brock Purdy, were honorable mention just outside the top 10. But I would expect Jordan Love, with the performance he puts together this season, to certainly be on this list next year and maybe pretty high up on it. But here's the list. You will not be surprised to hear that Patrick Mahomes was number one, obviously. I'm actually questioning whoever voted him second. That was his lowest ranking of any of these coaches, executives, was 2. I don't know how you make a case that you'd rather have anyone besides Patrick Mahomes. Now, that doesn't mean that that's, everyone believes the Chiefs are going to three-peat. It's just who's the best quarterback, and it's Patrick Mahomes. And it's probably not as close as people would like it to be. But that is a different question than who you taking to win the Super Bowl or who do you think's going to go to the Super Bowl. That doesn't have to be the Chiefs. But I don't know how you vote anybody over Patrick Mahomes. The fact that he led this team to back-to-back titles, given all of the talk that was around this team, and I'll raise my hand, I partook. It was not looking good for the Kansas City Chiefs for a long stretch of time this season. But what he did in the postseason just even more cements it. If you're voting anyone over Patrick Mahomes, then I seriously question your motives. But he got enough first place votes to be number one. At number 2, it's Joe Burrow. And I say it in that tone because we didn't see Joe Burrow very much last year. And Lamar Jackson had a phenomenal season, and Josh Allen was Josh Allen-like. So to put Joe Burrow over them, I do think is interesting, but I think it has to do with Patrick Mahomes. It has to do with the Chiefs. How many chances does Josh Allen need before you decide, you know what? He's not going to beat him. And I think a lot of people going into this season look at if anybody's going to stop the Chiefs three-peat, at least on the AFC side, and deny them an opportunity to even play for the Super Bowl, it's going to be Cincinnati. For most people. I think and Josh Allen is third. I think the separation is game on the line. Who do you want? And that's not to say that you wouldn't love to have Josh Allen, right? In the top 3, 4, 5, we're talking about the elite of the elite. We're splitting hairs here. But I think it would be Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a little more steady than Josh Allen. Josh Allen last year, although it's not his fault that the Buffalo Bills lost to the Kansas City Chiefs again, but you saw throughout the season that Josh Allen's inconsistent gunslinger, out of control self kind of came through a little bit. And with Joe Burrow, that doesn't really exist. The predictability, but in a good way, of Joe Burrow is what I think puts him over Josh Allen, but he's not a superior athlete. But when healthy, I think if you were to choose tomorrow your quarterback in a big game, Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, I think you take Joe Burrow. And then Allen's 3, Lamar's 4. And man, are we sure Lamar's 4th? Should Lamar be over Josh Allen? I suppose not. But I'm glad to see that Lamar is in this group. And look, I think it's, if we're doing tiers, it's Mahomes 1, and I think you go Burrow, Allen, Lamar, and then it's a little bit of your taste. It's a little bit what you prioritize, but this group of 3, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar, I mean, they're total packages, right? Josh Allen, Lamar's the best, athlete, but Josh Allen, with his size. But Lamar Jackson is a complete quarterback. And it's kind of shocking to me that there are reports over the summer that now the Ravens are going to give Lamar Jackson more license to call out audibles. Like, it's almost like the Ravens even doubted that Lamar is as cerebral a quarterback as some of these other guys. Lamar thinks the game at a high level. He could throw the ball with the best of them. And then, of course, his separator is his ability to run. So I guess I would agree with the top 4 as they are. This one is interesting. At 5, Matthew Stafford. And I think you file this under absence makes the heart grow fonder. Because we already had this a little bit with Stafford. Because in Detroit, a lot of people dogged him, right? And acted like he had some responsibility in the Lions being an absolute disaster of a franchise. Then he goes to LA with good coaching, with good players around him, and they win a Super Bowl. And it's like, oh, Stafford was really good this whole time. And then people maybe start to look at Stafford and go, I don't know. And then he gets hurt. And then he comes back and you're like, oh, yeah, Matthew Stafford. I mean, it's just, that's been his entire career. I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks of the last 20 years. He is supremely talented. And the fact that Cooper Kupp becomes a prolific wide receiver. Like, Cooper Kupp was good, and then Cooper Kupp became Jerry Rice with Matthew Stafford. And then, Puka Nacua. I mean, the credit goes to the Rams front office, but You think Puka Nacua would have had a successful year last year with Russell Wilson? Or Kenny Pickett? But I do think at the same time that I think this is Matthew Stafford getting an appropriate amount of flowers. I also think it's because of how much these other guys have fallen off from here on out. The perception around them. You look at number 6 is Justin Herbert. Number 7, CJ Stroud. It's just because he was nowhere and now he's on there. So this doesn't apply to him. But Herbert at 6 and Rodgers at 8. I think these, and even Dak at 10. I think these are quarterbacks that, even though you might recognize are still very good, I think some of the shine has come off of them a little bit. I think Justin Herbert's going to be successful with Jim Harbaugh, right? But you see some things with Justin Herbert where you go, and I asked this question last year, like, is it only when Brandon Staley is fired that people start looking at Justin Herbert with a little bit more of a critical eye? I think, like, I love Justin Herbert. I'm not trying to say he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but, you know, it's not all Brandon Staley. There were some bad throws late in games. There were some poor decisions from Justin Herbert. He wasn't perfect, and Brandon Staley was just the polar opposite of that. Brandon Staley was more of the problem, and I think you'll see that with Jim Harbaugh taking over in LA. But and Dallas is a great example, right? I mean, there's plenty of blame for Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. But it's like in LA, Justin Herbert got no criticism. And I think these are people these are executives and coaches that are kind of looking and saying, you know, Justin Herbert, if he's what he's supposed to be, then the Chargers shouldn't lose as many games as they lose. It's not all Brandon Staley. So I think you see the stock a little bit down on Justin Herbert, but then it bounces right back up because he has Jim Harbaugh. And then Aaron Rodgers, I think, has taken quite a hit in perception. You know, what is he doing this for? Where are his priorities? Now you have this injury that he's coming off of, which is not his fault, but I think people are very weary of Aaron Rodgers this year. How good is he going to be? How good are the Jets going to be? A year ago, there were people picking the Jets to win the division, to go deep in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers to win an MVP. This year, Aaron Rodgers is back, and you're not getting any of that. Or at least very little. So maybe it's a combination of Matthew Stafford being recognized for the quarterback that he is, and we just didn't see it because he was in Detroit. Maybe it has to do with some of these other ones that we would immediately put near the top of the list where we're like, yeah, I think they need to show a little bit more. Jared Goff, just to fill out the top 10, was number 9. And again, Purdy, Love, Hurts, Tua, Cousins, Lawrence after that. Little surprised Jalen Hurts is where he is, but I agree. I thought it was crazy when people were including Jalen Hurts as one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. There's no way. There's no way when 2 years ago. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. The 3 stories that are driving the show coming up next. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you on this Thursday. Glad to have you. Wednesday. Why I keep saying Thursday? Trying to move faster through the week, I suppose. I am taking the boys to the Jonas Brothers concert on Saturday. So that's clearly why I'm trying to move this week along as quickly as possible, because I cannot wait to see my boys Nick, Joe, and the other one at Widener Field on Saturday. That's probably what it is. It is Wednesday. It is not Thursday. But I thank you for listening all the same, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the widely available and 100% free Extra Sports 1300 app. Bottom of the hour, if you're on your way home, Caitlin Clark in action on the S-spin against Arike Ogunbowale and the Dallas Wings, if you are so inclined. Last night, big win for the Chicago Sky over the Las Vegas Aces. Angel Reese, Rookie of the Year? No, but it's a good win. Defending champs, being Asia Wilson. But Fever and Wings at the bottom of the hour if you're looking for something to watch. In the meantime, here's something to listen to. It's the three stories that are driving the show. Story number one is Quinn Meinert's going to have a lot of disposable income to keep up that belly of his as the Broncos guard agrees to a 4-year, $80 million extension, according to Adam Schefter and every NFL insider who is worth their salt. It's a lucrative extension, no doubt about it. And in fact, I just saw something from Spot Track, the popular contract website, saying Quinn Meinert's deal is now the 5th largest contract in Broncos history based on total value. Russell Wilson is number one. That stings. $242.5 million. Von Miller, $114.1. Peyton Manning, $96. Mike McGlinchey, $87.5, and now Quinn Meinert's $80. That makes it even more eye-popping, the fact that it's the 5th most lucrative contract the Denver Broncos organization has ever handed out. But notice the last two names on that list. Offensive lineman, current offensive lineman. Sean Payton's first order of business when he arrived in Denver was to go out and try to fortify the offensive line. He signed McGlinchey. He signed Ben Powers. And now they're making sure that one of the best guards in the league remains in a Broncos uniform for the foreseeable future. And when you look in total with Garrett Bowles, of course, a part of this, making $20 million, this is the most expensive offensive line in the National Football League. But I think it's kind of like when the Denver Nuggets signed both Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter to those extensions. It's not about the price tag for the individual. It's about the price tag for the whole. What the Nuggets were paying for was that core four. What the Broncos are paying for is this offensive line that as a unit, they believe can be very good and protect their shiny new potential franchise quarterback in Bo Nix. They're buying the whole lot, and they're buying it for a premium price, no doubt about it. But Quinn Meinert's was arguably their best offensive lineman, and that Broncos offensive line, I think, was pretty good last year. Got to figure out center, and will Garrett Bowles be the next to sign his extension. That's kind of the other part of this. You would think, given the priority list, that Garrett Bowles' extension would have come down before Quinn Meinert's. I don't know if he's the top priority. I think the fact that Quinn Meinert's deal is done means that he is the higher priority. And that might not be a referendum on Garrett Bowles, like they don't like him, but maybe Garrett Bowles doesn't quite fit what Sean Payton wants his left tackle to do. Maybe they're okay with losing him, or at least okay with them letting him test the market. But I do find it curious that Quinn Meinert's gets an extension done before Garrett Bowles. But it is good news. And and look, not for nothing, but it's a dang good story for a guy that was drafted in the third round of out of a D3 school and is now one of the top 5 highest paid players at his position. Quinn Meinert's easy guy to like, and it's not just because of the belly. Again, 4 years, $80 million for Quinn Meinert's. It's an expensive wall they're building in front of Bo Nix, no? Story number 2 is what we learned today from Team USA's rout of Serbia in a pre-Olympic showcase game. One is that perhaps Team USA will not have as much of a problem getting out of group play or winning their group as estimated prior. But I would still say that Team USA is better than Serbia. There's one guy in particular that can take over a basketball game and make life very difficult for Team USA. And Nikola Jokic started the game opposite Joel Embiid. And we got those two guys matching up this morning. We don't see it nearly enough. You know the reasons why. And now you kind of understand why Joel Embiid has some injuries flare up when he shows up to Denver. Nikola Jokic twice within the first 6 minutes of the game, as Chris Marlowe would say, put Joel Embiid in the spin cycle. Faked one way, went back the other, and Joel Embiid was still hunched over the other way as Nikola Jokic is blowing by him for an easy look at the basket. Joel Embiid, just so the rest of the NBA knows, is not a player that can defend Nikola Jokic one-on-one. And so until Wemby is ready, and he's certainly not, because look at what Jokic did to him and Gobert, there is no one player who can defend Nikola Jokic one-on-one. So we found that out. But we also found out, and maybe we should have known, or I should have known, I'm not going to put on you, maybe you knew, you just didn't tell me. When Anthony Davis has help, like Bam Adebayo, they together can defend Nikola Jokic. That's what you saw today in Abu Dhabi. One-on-one, Nikola Jokic roasted Joel Embiid. And now I seriously have to question Joel Embiid on this basketball team. I really do. He sticks out like a sore thumb. He doesn't fit. He looks lost when he can't be a foul merchant. He looks lost when he can't be the number one option. I don't know what he's going to be for this team, but it doesn't look like he's a good fit. But that duo of Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis, that works. That continues to work. That's been the best thing about Team USA through these 3 exhibitions is Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo together. And we've seen Anthony Davis one-on-one with Jokic. That's Darvin Ham saying, Rui Hachimura, you get him. But if he has Bam helping him, Now you've found the closest thing that anybody has gotten to recreate Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis in the bubble. And it's probably better. Nikola Jokic struggled with Anthony Davis on him and Bam Adebayo roaming. He's going to have to figure that out. And knowing Nikola Jokic, he will. He won't struggle against Team USA as much as he did today. He learns. He's like a computer. He's like AI. He'll learn. But that works against him. Joel Embiid doesn't. And Joel Embiid in general just doesn't work for Team USA. But the U.S. cruises past Serbia. No backdoor cover this time. U.S. easily gets by Serbia. Nikola Jokic has some film study to do, but if Steve Kerr wants his best chance to slow down Nikola Jokic on July 28th, he better not have Joel Embiid on him. Because that was laughable. Joel Embiid trying to guard Nikola Jokic. Story number 3. I actually have audio of this one.
Being out there, I don't think I blacked out when I was out there, but I was pretty close. It was cool to be on that mound.
Pirates ace Paul Skeens last night, coming pretty close to living up to the hype. I guess the hype was he would strike out the AL in order in the first. That was probably a little bit too much to ask, given the quality of opposition. But Paul Skeens pitched a scoreless bottom of the first, threw 16 pitches, 11 of them were strikes. The only blemish was a walk to Juan Soto. Ohtani with a mammoth home run. Yet the AL won somehow, which has been pretty much the story of the All-Star game over the last decade, is that we're talking about National League things happening, yet the American League finds a way. Jared Duran played the role of hero. In fact, fun fact, the only game that the National League has won over the last 11 years, do you know who the MVP of that game was? Do you know who hit the game-winning home run? Of course you do. It was Rockies catcher Elias Diaz. Elias Diaz has been the only thing standing in the American League's way of winning every All-Star game over the past 11 years. That is wild. But Paul Skeens, you saw him against the best hitters that the AL had. More than held his own. Ohtani continues to make you shake your head at how he's able to do the things that he does on a baseball field. And the AL won. So it pretty much lived up to expectation all around, except for, and I don't know, maybe this is living up to expectation as well, because we know baseball is going to screw something up every chance they get. Those uniforms were the Ingrid Andress national anthem of uniforms. They were horrifying. They were repulsive. And they nearly overshadowed the event. I know why they decided to do this. Money. They should not have. Greed should not have won the day in MLB's offices. They had a good thing going. Just let, and put them in whatever the hell you want to put them in for, like the Derby and all that kind of stuff. You want to sell that. Don't put it in the game. Just have them wear their normal team uniforms. We can tell who's hitting. We can tell who's pitching. That was the thing. You couldn't even tell who was out on the field. What was it? 20 or 30 first-time All-Stars? Who do you think outside of the state of Colorado could recognize Ryan McMahon? They'd have a hard enough time recognizing him if he was wearing Rockies gear. And you put him in that nonsense? You couldn't tell who any of these people are. At least show me. Allow me to see what team they play for. Baseball going to baseball. Some bright spots, some good things, but you just got to do that one thing that screws everything up. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. The other big story today, a momentous occasion, Broncos report for training camp. At least some of them. But we're here. We've made it. It is football season. Back after this. (719-24/7-1313) is the number. Earlier, I went over ESPN's list of the top 10 quarterbacks, and why I brought it up is not because ESPN ranked them. I don't know that I would spend any time on that, but they asked executives, coaches, front office people, scouts. When ESPN polls people in the industry, I'm very interested. I'm not interested to see who Kendrick Perkins thinks is wrong sport, but you get my point. So these are people inside the league that are ranking these. Again, if you did not hear, number one is Mahomes, Doy. The more surprising thing is somebody ranked him second on one ballot. Then it's Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Stafford, Herbert, Stroud, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott. Tom texts in and said, as a sane person, how the heck would you want Dak to lead your team ahead of Hurts? Dak has had all the offensive weapons you could wish for and has done nothing, and I mean nothing, in all caps. Here's my theory on it. They are not being asked the question, if you had to win a game tomorrow, who do you want? They're not asking who the big game quarterback is. Now, it could factor in, but you're right. You don't win. But don't you want Dak Prescott for the majority of the regular season? I think why Dak is over Purdy, Hurts, is because all around, he's a more talented quarterback. He's a more talented passer. Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts are limited as throwers of the football. Like, let's just be real about it. They're both limited. And you want to talk about having all, like, I don't know, that's the argument that you want to make, because Jalen Hurts has had a pretty good go of it. One of the best centers to ever play football, that play the tush push that only they can run. He has A.J. Brown. So Jalen Hurts has had a lot of weapons. I think Dak Prescott is a more talented thrower of the football. If I had to win the Super Bowl, I would not take Dak Prescott. If I had to win a big game, I would not take Dak Prescott. But he's more talented as a thrower of the football than either Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy. Other names that just got left out, Trevor Lawrence, he took a step back last year. Was it health or regression? We shall see. I think Jordan Love is going to be great this year. So I think Dak's not long for this list. Because as I said, you have Herbert, you have Rodgers, and you have Dak, who are all falling on this list. Maybe not as fast as you'd like them to or as far as you'd like them to, but Dak Prescott has gone from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. His stock is falling. And I think one scout or somebody, what was the exact? Like, he does just enough or something. Like, he does just enough to keep himself in that top 10. I am not a big Jalen Hurts guy. And I'm certainly not a fan of Dak Prescott. So I could see both sides of that argument. I think what it comes down to is that Dak Prescott does win a lot of games. Are they big games? No. But he wins a lot of games, puts up a lot of numbers. He's a talented thrower of the football. And I think that's what carries him over the more limited quarterbacks like Brock and Jalen Hurts. But doesn't that also, at the same time, doesn't that also speak to, even though everybody pretty much now has a quarterback except Vegas. Vegas is like the only team now that either doesn't have a high draft pick, and I guess Jalen Hurts was a second round pick. So maybe Philly's in this group too. But all these other teams either have a high paid quarterback. Oh, San Francisco, duh. But at least they like Brock Purdy. Do they like him or do they like him? That's what we're about to find out in San Francisco when it's time for them to open up the checkbook. But like the Raiders are one of the only teams that either haven't spent a high draft pick on a quarterback that's on their roster or paid out a quarterback, one of these massive quarterback extensions. And yet, if Dak Prescott is the 10th best quarterback in the league, that's less than a third of the league. Dak is 10th. Just goes to show you that everyone except Vegas may have a quarterback. Not everybody has the quarterback. Right? So we can make these grand proclamations and look from 30,000 feet and say, you know, quarterback play is better than it ever has been, and these numbers are being put up or like Star Wars numbers. Well, who's driving that? Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff. Rodgers when he's healthy, Herbert, and that's about it. Because I think that is a little bit of a knock, or at least a case study in how there aren't as many franchise quarterbacks you believe in the NFL. And I don't even know that I believe in Jared Goff that much. I believe it. I'll take Jared Goff over Dak Prescott. I agree with that ranking. But I don't know how much I believe in Jared Goff. The number of truly elite quarterbacks, it's not that long. It's like 6 guys. Now, if Stroud can follow up last year, then I think you could throw him onto the list. I think Jordan Love, if he does what I think he's going to do, maybe he's in that conversation. There's just not that many. Everybody seems to have one, though. Look around the league, either a first-round pick or making an ungodly amount of money. Except for Vegas, San Fran. That's like it. Just aren't enough of them. It's almost like you got to ask the question, not who would you rather have or which quarterback you would take. It's almost like if there was some sort of opt-out, right? If I said, you're not to be overly dramatic, but like your life is on the line, or how about your life savings are on the line? Okay. But you also have the ability to say no. Like you call the whole thing off, right? It's like Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. I mean, even then, the way I put it, maybe it's just Mahomes. But my point being, there's only a few quarterbacks in this league that you really believe in. Like really and truly. And you're looking at it like Josh Allen. It wasn't on Josh Allen that they exited stage left against the Chiefs again last year, right? Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, is just not much of them. Not many of them. Not many of them. Here's another list, and I hesitate to do this, but I will bring it up because I agree with it. They put out power rankings after free agency has concluded in the NBA. And I agree with this because I had said the other day after, Clay went to Dallas and all the settling, I thought you could put Denver, although they are one of the few teams in the West that I could see playing in the NBA Finals next year, said I certainly put Minnesota and Oklahoma City above them, and I could make a case for Dallas. I really could. And that was just in the West. And now I'm seeing this from ESPN, and they're agreeing with me, which kind of makes me worried, and maybe I should change my mind completely. But they have Boston 1, OKC 2, Minnesota 3, the Knicks 4. That might be... Yeah. Maybe. I like what the Knicks have done. Absolutely. I think they're a threat. So that's fine. They could be 4, Dallas 5, Philly 6, and Denver 7. Milwaukee 8. And that's really the group. Right? If Embiid's healthy and Giannis and Damian Lillard, if all that gets sorted out and all that's right, and some of the underlying metrics were pretty good when Lillard and Giannis were on the court together. If you believe they will figure it out in year 2, that's really the group. If you're picking anybody to go to the NBA Finals outside of that group, then you really need to explain yourself. But I would definitely put Denver above Philly. I don't agree with that whatsoever. But what I agree with is that the Denver Nuggets may very well be the 4th best team in the West right now. Them and Dallas, I go back and forth. But I think Oklahoma City and Minnesota, you have to acknowledge what they are. Now, is Oklahoma City, are we a year early on OKC? Do they have to develop some more of that playoff scar tissue before they're really ready to take that step? But on paper, and that's what this is, right? This is just on paper. You have to give OKC the nod. And then Minnesota, you absolutely have to. And while I don't think Klay Thompson is this huge needle mover, I mean, who was Dallas's 3rd option last year? I don't know that they really had one. Derek Lively. So if they can get something out of Klay with Luka and Kyrie, I think they have the Nuggets placed appropriately as far as the West is concerned. I would put Denver over Philly in the grand scheme of things. And I would probably put them over New York. So Denver should be a little bit higher. But I think they could be right now the fourth best team. Now, to that end, Michael Malone yesterday during the Nuggets Summer League game was asked on the telecast what his team still needs, and he said someone to back up Jamal Murray. So, sorry, Jalen Pickett. You never were going to be the guy, and you're clearly not going to be the guy for Michael Malone. But then he said Calvin Booth's all over it. And I don't know if he was taking a little bit of a dig. Gary Trent Jr. would have looked really good in a Nuggets uniform, and he signed for the minimum in Milwaukee. Why wouldn't he sign for the minimum in Denver? And he get outbid for him. He'd be a good fit. Maybe it's because Westbrook is on the way. But clearly Michael Malone is not ready to play Jalen Pickett or even Trey Alexander, who's become one of the darlings of Summer League. He wants someone behind Jamal Murray, and at this point, all you can get are veterans. No one's coming out of this Summer League to back up Jamal Murray. But you lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Not that I expected Deron Holmes to be a playoff contributor to the Denver Nuggets, but he did fill a need for depth production. Now they don't have that. Now it's like Vlatko's going to be in that second group. Don't love that. You like the pickup of Dario Saric. You like what you've seen from Julian Strawther. And I think Russell Westbrook fits with this team. So all hope is not lost. But there are two guys that you probably really like, at least for the regular season for the Denver Nuggets, that are not there. So now we wait for Russell Westbrook. Or more accurately, we wait for the Clippers to buy out Russell Westbrook. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we always talk about the Caitlin Clark effect, and now we actually have a dollar amount to tie to it. Tell you next on Extra Sports 1300.